Hi, I'm Tina Beth Pina from CUNY TV. Higher education is a place where there aren't as many Latinas as there should be. But why? Three City University of New York profesoras are about to discuss that very topic in today's special edition of LATiNAS, Caliente Caliente.
When I went to school, I didn't have a Latina teacher, maybe one Spanish teacher in my whole K through 12. And so that has an impact on you, right? In college, I had one Latino professor. At graduate school, I had one Latina professor and one Latino professor. So I mean, right, if you go all the way through, you realize that kids need those kinds of role models. They need people to look up to. They need to see the possibilities. And for me, I started seeing leadership in the church from women, right? So I didn't see it in school and in my books. I didn't learn anything about my history and who I was, but I definitely got it through the church. And so that, I think, had a great impact on me. How about you, ladies?
I appreciate what you said, Maria, regarding both the lack of representation that is historic in this country, and then also the fact that there are so many Latina leaders everywhere else, right? So I definitely saw these incredible bosses of women, you know, like they were just so charismatic and intelligent, and they multitasked, and they were so strong. And I saw them in the church. I saw them in El Barrio. I grew up in Chicago, so there were a lot of Latina leaders there. I don't believe I had any Latina teachers in grammar school or high school. I didn't have any Latina professors until I was in my doctoral program in Texas. It was incredible. I felt like I had seen something that I had been waiting for my whole life, because there were so many Latina professors, and they were all experts that had so much to give in every area in terms of expertise, but also in terms of how to navigate that in your family. They were very understanding of students who had children. They really, I feel, are setting the bar for what we should be doing in higher education. So I do see that there are changes, but again, while the numbers in the UT system or in the South and the West are higher, in the North and in the East, we still do not have enough Latinas, and I think it's because of stereotypes. I think that we're stereotyped into the chili pepper, you know, and people think that that's all we are, so they don't trust our knowledge.
Well, I really relate to what you're describing. I had no Latinos or Latinas in high school, elementary school, college, or graduate school. I mean, it's amazing when you look at the numbers in the country at large. We need to look at how many Latinas there are today, but also where we are, because we're not everywhere in higher education. We're in education and we're in health, but we're not so much in the humanities where I am. There's hardly any in the humanities. And I think it has to do with cultural racism and a disregard and a disinterest of the intellectual traditions coming from Latin America and from Latinx communities in the United States. You can get a PhD in philosophy, you can get a PhD in English, and know nothing whatsoever about the Latina literature traditions or philosophy or theory or social theory of any sort. And it's a very rich tradition to ignore. It's a tradition that actually could help this country as it's facing certain challenges today and mixing more and dealing with different things. I think it's a very rich tradition of social theory in coming out of Latin America that is not taught. Part of the reason for the lack of representation of hiring individuals is because what we bring to the table isn't valued. Because often we do bring to the table some knowledge, even if we didn't get it in school. I did reading on my own to study this tradition. We bring some knowledge from our experience, from our families, from our own reading, but that's not valued, I think, very often in higher education. In philosophy, it used to be the case you had to take the language requirements, and it was French or German, Latin or Greek. Those were the only ones. So they would not accept Spanish. So one of the things some of us who were agitating for change in philosophy did was address that. Spanish should be allowed as a language that's important to intellectual ideas. And so I think that's an important piece of why we don't see more of us in the humanities in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a first generation college student and college graduate. And yet, and I got my PhD, the only reason pretty much is because there was an opportunity from the National Institute of Mental Health at Fordham University. Some faculty members said there's so few sociologists, and so 6 fellowships were granted, particularly targeting, right, Hispanic sociologists. So that's the only reason I stand here, right, because I had the opportunity and I was able to take it, and I got the highest education this country has to offer, right? But on my own, I wouldn't be able to afford it. I didn't even know that there were such a thing as, PhDs. I thought the only doctors were medical doctors when I entered school. And with my students, I tried to educate them on the things that I know I didn't know when I got to college so that they could understand it better. Because I think that's our responsibility, to help them navigate a different culture, a different language. University setting is very, very different if you haven't been exposed to that, if you didn't grow up in that. And so I thought, for me, one of my responsibilities about also teaching history that wasn't taught, right? Teaching about things that we don't know about Puerto Ricans and Latinxes and why they're here and why we're here and how did we get to where we got to. I think that's so important. So that discipline, right? It's only about 52 years old now or so that discipline has been created. And it was created by students out of the need of Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Panamanians, students, faculty, and staff coming together and saying, basta ya, we need to see ourselves reflected in the academy. And so that opened up not only a discipline and a field, it also opened up, right, students coming in with open admissions. So it was during that whole time of the struggle of the 1960s, the late 1960s, that came to be. That's part of the wonder and the struggle of people coming together, uniting, collaborating. Not only Latinxes, it was Black students as well, right? So Black and Latino studies, or Black and Puerto Rican studies, came out of the movement of students uniting with many peoples across from different colors and cultural backgrounds. But it was the push to open up. And it opened up for many students, and faculty, right, started coming out of that. People like us started coming out of that whole wave. So CUNY itself plays a great role in granting degrees, right, to Latinxes and to women in particular. And so, I'm a product of CUNY as well. So I'm a proud CUNY product.
I'm glad that both of you brought up the humanities, because one thing that we do really have to face is that the humanities have been incredibly defunded for a very long time. And at this point, we really do have to, again, educate our young Latina scholars as to what they can do with the humanities. Because right now, I'm in this position. So as you mentioned, students at CUNY specifically, they fought to have Black and Puerto Rican studies at CUNY back in the 60s and 70s. And in particular at BCC, they protested, and we put Black and Puerto Rican studies on as a major. But then the problem is that the classes were not populated by professors who had that expertise. We did not hire professors who could teach the classes. We did not continue to hire coordinators. So I'm in this new role at my campus where I'm coordinating a Black and Latinx studies option under the liberal arts major, which we brought back because the actual Black and Puerto Rican studies major just fell by the wayside. It wasn't pushed through pathways. So through a variety of surveys, we learned that a lot of professors are already teaching these classes. Why don't we have a major so that students can benefit from this? So we're bringing it back. But that said, as a coordinator, I literally have to go to classes and tell students what the major is. And that is breaking my heart, because I feel like when I was younger, I was dying for these studies. I wanted them so badly. But now students, all they hear is STEM, 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 STEM. And the truth is, my own PhD was funded by the US Department of Agriculture. And I found a way to propose, looking at environments in Latino literature. So I was able to be there, but you could tell that a lot of the folks there did not understand what I was doing, because what they were doing was very much in the science and tech disciplines. We really do need to educate our communities and let them understand, actually, there are tons of professions that you can go into with a BA in Black and Latinx studies, a master's, a PhD. You can go into PR, you can diversify the tech world if you still want to be kind of in the tech world. There's so many things that can be done. And we need Latinas in higher education to carry that flag.
Absolutely.
When I started in philosophy, there were 3 in the country of Latina philosophy professors. And there's about 10,000 philosophers in the country.
Ooh.
So, the numbers. And I think now we've probably quadrupled, maybe quintupled, which is really great, but it's still, pathetically small. We need to create pipelines in PhD programs. Everybody reads Gloria Anzaldúa, as they should, in freshman classes and women's and gender studies, for example. Mm-hmm. But then as you go through up to the senior level and into graduate school, you find less Latinx and Latin American texts that are assigned to read, or courses that are assigned to read. So we are not creating the pipelines, I think, at the PhD level. I think what's changed for our generation, Maria, I think maybe you and I are close, is we have a critical mass now in CUNY, in our professional organizations nationally. So we have conferences sometimes, we have panels sometimes, where everybody is working on these similar topics. We're all doing a lot of work in our professional life to help create majors, bring the younger generation along. But this is a taxation on us, right? It's called the cultural taxation that professors have to do, all this diversity work that doesn't always get recognized at tenure time or promotion time. We have to change the culture of higher education to recognize this work, not just in the service category, because it's a lot of times the service category is kind of, devalued. This is intellectual work that we're doing. The critical mass that we're creating to change our professions and to bring new work through is part of our intellectual work, and it needs to be seen as such, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at CUNY itself, right, about 77% of the undergraduate students are students of color. All right. In terms of the faculty, it's about 39% faculty of color. And then you start looking at the numbers of Latinxs. In terms of Latinxs at CUNY, we're about 32% of the population. But in terms of Latinx faculty, full-time faculty, it's about almost 11%. right? So the student population of Latinx is 3 times the number of the professors of Latinx background. So we have a lot of work to do. And if you're looking at administration, yeah, that's even, the numbers are even lower, right, for Latinxes and Latinas in terms of administration. I know Chancellor Matos Rodriguez is working on that, and he has a good track record. So he's trying to diversify, but we have a long way to go. And I think the pipelines are really important. We need to invest, we need to focus on our students. Students can do it, but they have many challenges, right? And one of them is economic challenges. So how do we address those challenges? Well, we start giving them tuition, right? Fellowships that they can capitalize on. If they need to work, let them work as an undergraduate research assistant, right? And so you teach them things that they will be learning, that they need to know for the graduate level. And so, yeah, we need those kinds of programs that will support the students, give them what they need, and definitely hire more, right, Latinas and Latinos, Latinxes to serve as their professors, because they really need to see them there. So really important part. So the pipeline is critical.
And I'm glad that both of you are talking about that pipeline, because the Mellon Foundation has given us this incredible grant to not only develop curriculum, but to also develop a PhD program. So right now, I am on the steering committee for the Black Race and Ethnic Studies Initiative's PhD program, which it's very ambitious. They want it to be up and running very soon. It might be a little bit later than we hope. But that said, we are definitely looking at making sure that some of those knowledges that you were talking about are part of that program. And one of the bells that I sounded is for border theory, because I find that folks will have other language there, but I really wanted that to be overtly stated, because that is a theory that comes from a U.S. Latina, and we need to scream it from the mountaintop that this is something that we created, and this is something that can not only be studied on the Texas-Mexico border, but we can also look at it in terms of, the Dominican Republic and Haiti. We can look at it in terms of, theoretical borders between the U.S. and Puerto Rico proper. So there are ways to incorporate these knowledges and have them be part of this PhD program that is historic. I mean, no other program like it will be on the East Coast, Black Race and Ethnic Studies at CUNY. So I'm glad that we have the right idea in regards to that. However, I worry about continued funding, because we have the funding to develop the program, but as far as making sure that it's successful, again, I don't want to see the same thing happen that happened with the Black and Puerto Rican Studies major at BCC, where it just kind of, nothing happened with it, and then we had to reinstate it in kind of a diluted version. I really want to make sure that this PhD program is strong, is stable, and that it hires a significant number of Latinas.
Yes, I feel like I sort of got through the eye of the needle when I got my degree, because I'm a high school dropout. I got my GED, and then I went to college, and I dropped out of college. And when I started my PhD, I had 2 small children. And I want to tell my students this, because I want them to know you don't have to go through this straight and narrow, perfect path in order to be able to succeed in the academy and becoming a professor. And I think I came through the eye of the needle because when I was in college in the 1970s, I went to Florida State University and tuition was $175 a quarter. So I could work my way through college in those days. You can't work your way. I mean, my students at CUNY try to work their way through college, and we have really low tuition, but they struggle because they have to work full time, and sometimes they can't keep it up, you know, working full time and going to school full time. So we're in a precarious moment in terms of funding. The tuition needs to come down. CUNY needs to have free tuition again.
Yes.
We need to forgive the loans, and we need to support these programs. People can do it, but they can't do it under impossible conditions. So I want to give the message that you can do it even if you have small children. I had a wonderful husband, thank God, mi esposo, so that made a big difference. But you can do it, even if you drop out of high school, even if you drop out of college, even if you have no money. It is possible, but we need to make it easier and more possible for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I start off, with a lesson on my name, right? My last name and why it is Perez y Gonzalez, right? So first lesson, and then I tell a little bit of my story because the students can relate to it, right? So I am the daughter of a migrant farm worker that came from Puerto Rico, and then who became a factory worker. My mother, secretary, right, and receptionist, and then a clerk, and so. From there, and then public assistance for a long time, because I lived only with my mother for a long time. So I tell them, I said, I'm a product of funding that is given to folks who can't make it on their own at certain periods in time. And so that's me. And then going through college, right, TAP and Pell helped me through. If that wasn't there, I wouldn't have finished. I wouldn't have even started college. And then, of course, the NIMH grant that I got, the fellowship, that helped me through my PhD. So I only, spent like $500, that I owed, which is amazing, right, in terms of a doctoral degree. So I am the product of people investing and believing that certain opportunities should be given equitably to all peoples, including Latinxes and Latinas, right? And so I think that's critical because in terms of funding these programs and long-term funding, there have to be people willing to invest. And I think, us being in the classroom, that makes a huge difference.
If it is a straight line for you, wow, how lucky. But for me, yes, how boring. But for me, it was, I loved art classes in high school. I was very good. I adored math. I adored reading, but I was not getting what I needed to get. Even though I was in a prep school program, it was a public school, but it was a prep school program. I was not getting any Latino authors at all, nothing like that. So when I got to college, I ended up withdrawing within the first semester. And it's interesting because when you have to get a paper signed by the deans and such, and they looked at me, little Latina, they didn't even ask, how are you doing? Are you okay? Maybe you can do this and you don't realize it. Yeah, okay, bye. I thankfully found the right place for me, but when I did go eventually back to get my master's degree, and I was a straight A student when I did return for my bachelor's, when I went to get my master's degree, I didn't have certain English credits that I needed. And I had to, again, go to the dean. And the dean made me take every single English class they offered, including developmental English. I had to take an extra year beyond what everyone else was taking. And I am still paying off those loans. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about creating these pipelines and creating the funding, it's really important. I don't own a house because I'm paying off those loans. We want to raise these young Latina intellectuals into folks who can have their casita, into folks who can create a scholarship for someone else, like I have done at BCC. So it's important to know those origin stories and to change that.
We're here now to help give them a leg up.
I see younger Latina scholars up and coming. I'm part of the Hispanic Association for Colleges and Universities Leadership Academy, and so when I went to that conference a few weeks ago, I saw all of these Latinx presidents, including Latina presidents of colleges and universities. It was awesome. It was so inspiring. And so I do have hope. I do, because I see people coming along. And my role in that is to make sure that our, students of all colors and backgrounds, but particularly Latinx students and Latinas, actually have those opportunities. And I push them along. Because what happens is we're in the pipeline, but we don't know where things are or who to go to or of the different opportunities. So while my students tended to get sick of my emails, I made sure that I blasted emails to the students of scholarships, fellowships, opportunities, things that they can do, because that's how, right, you sort of get experience and you know more and you connect more with people. I am very hopeful. Pa'lante.
This is an invitation for folks, and I hope that they see we are only 3 here. There are so many of us, and we really do need to recognize Latinas more and more. So I'm very hopeful. I see it happening, and it's going to keep happening.
Thanks for watching this special edition of Latinas. Hasta la próxima y ¡Uepa! Bye-bye.